things that you're already doing well because you're naturally have an aptitude for it, and also be reminded of the things that you might shy away from because it's not your strength. So a little bit about myself, just sort of as a why I'm talking about this. I've been doing this sort of business for about 15 years. I've been the new director 4 times. At least one of those times I was sort of the end of a string of a lot of new directors that didn't last very long. And I remember at that particular location early in my career, suggesting a change, and was told very strongly, when you've been here 6 months, we'll try it your way. And so sometimes you have to start as a new director with kid gloves. Sometimes you can come in and just say, we're doing a clean slate. And so a lot of how you act and a lot of how you do those things sort of depends on the center that you're at. So you have to sort of guide yourself by what's already going on. But I think what I'm getting ready to share are fairly universal starting points that we can continue throughout our tenure. So number one thing that I think that new directors do, and they have an advantage when they're doing it, is that they get to know people. All right, so you can imagine, or you can remember when you started your job, you didn't know anyone at your place of work, and you had to get to know everyone. So you start to learn their names. Again, some of us better than others at that. You start to know their personalities. You start to know their likes, their dislikes. And then I think as a manager, especially as a director, you get to know their abilities. You get to know their limitations, their aptitude for whatever role that they're in, whether or not they're of a fit for the expectations that have been put upon them. You might start to get to know interpersonal issues, who doesn't like to work with who, and people's interests. So for some of us, that's, like I said, a natural thing. You're just going to get to know people. But for some of us, it takes a little more work to say, okay, what am I assuming about this person based on my first impressions, whether those were 8 months ago or 8 years ago? Because people change and people grow. You change, you grow. And you would never want anyone to think that you were the same person that you were when you first walked in, not knowing anything about your center. And I think it's fair to say that we've got to make sure that we're not assuming about the folks who work for us based on our initial assessments of all those things, their personalities and things that I just mentioned. I think we wouldn't want to say that they're never going to change. So it's always good to get to know people from a manager role, from a guidance role. It's good to know what's going on with people's lives right now. How often do you have a chance to say during a coffee break at your own site, to see what's going on in people's lives? Or is it all business? Is it all work? Do you only ever talk about what's happening in the tasks at hand and the guests that are coming in the room that's dirty? Or are you taking the time to get to know people the way that a new director would? So the advantage for a new director is that everyone wants to get to know you. So those conversations are automatic. People are going to go out of their way and come meet the new person. How you got to keep that going as someone who's got a little more tenure is that it's your job to make sure that those conversations happen. People aren't going to come and seek you out automatically. It's your job to go and make sure that the personal interactions and the things that keep stuff going at that level, it's the ball's in your court to keep that going. So the first thing is get to know people. The second thing is, as a new director, is that you would get to know the property. A new director at a site walks around. You walk into every building. You got to learn the names. You got to look in every closet. You want to try to find out where stuff's hidden, where there's room, where there's tables, where there's where the breaker boxes are, where the valves are for the pipes. You want to know all that stuff. So you go around. You look in every closet. You maybe hike the trails. You maybe climb every tree. They've ever had that. But you need to know where everything is. And if you're new, no one's blaming you that. No one thinks that you're going to be the king of the property or whatever, that have a map in your head. And so you need to know what those things are. New directors have the advantage that no one expects you to know everything. If you've been at your site for a while, everyone expects that you know what it looks like. But I would say when was the last time you put your head in every building? When was the last time you looked in every closet? Maybe you cleaned it out when you first got there. Maybe it's full of junk again and needs to be cleaned out. Maybe the last time you spent the night in your facility was the time when you came to be interviewed. Maybe the beds are a little harder since then. I've always tried to spend the night in all the locations. So we've got different places. We've had hotel style accommodations, right down to cabins, right down to camping areas. And I've always tried to make it a point to spend the night in all those spaces so that I know what a guest experiences. New people, new managers, new directors, new people, they want to get to know the property. And I encourage you that's something we should never stop doing. We should never stop looking in every building. Not that your housekeepers are being slack in their work, but it's nice sometimes to go in and let them know that their good job is being noticed. When was the last time you hiked the trails on your property? Do you know where their wet spots are? Do you know where there's trees down? Where people you're encouraging to go spend the afternoon on a hike? Is the trail really well marked that they're going to make it back? That's a good thing. That's a good thing to take someone with you, because you know where the trail turns and your guests don't. So having a new person come with you is a good idea. All right, so the things so far we got get to know people and get to know the property. Those are fairly obvious. A third thing that I think a new director has an advantage over someone who's been there a while is that you look at the programs and the services that are offered by your center objectively. So, and you judge them by the criteria that you decide to judge them on, right? So you've just gone through a process of hiring, and whatever your whether it's the board or whoever hired you, you know what their expectations are. They know what they want you to accomplish. So you judge what you're doing, the programs and services, by those criteria. Those criteria might be missions. How much of this program or this service fits the mission that you're called to do? How much of it is financial? Are we serving a specific target audience or a community with this program or this service? I think that the advantage that a new person has is that they can look at those programs and services without the veil of nostalgia. Right? Sometimes we find ourselves doing things because we've got a good feeling doing them. We find ourselves doing things because some time ago it was effective, or some time ago it was full, or some time ago it had made us a lot of money. A new director sometimes is dangerous to people who want to keep doing those things, right? So you come in and you look objectively at something and you go, okay, that Lenten fish fry, we really don't make any money on it, and it keeps us from booking the weekend because it's all Friday night. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that, but 10 years ago it was hundreds of people every Friday and we made tons of money. So it can be dangerous to come in and say we're not going to do that anymore, but we've got to remind ourselves what criteria we're using to look at our programs and services. So when is it time to end something that you shouldn't be doing, something that's keeping you from doing what you should be doing? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. If you've been somewhere long enough, you gotta try to take yourself out of it. Take the nostalgia, the good feelings, the memories, and say, is this meeting the goal that we would set, the criteria that we would set as the way we should be judging it. The flip side of that, and it's kind of the fourth thing, or it's kind of the second half of looking at programs and services objectively, is trying new things. When you're the new person, everything's new, so you're not afraid to try something new. It's easier to be creative. It's easier to say, well, why don't we this and why don't we that? Because you don't have any habits yet. You don't have any, well, this is the way we do things, and you don't get comfortable with that. So the new director has the advantage of being able to ask, why haven't we tried this? Why haven't we done it that way? Why do we still X, Y, Z? And usually there's answers. Sometimes they're because we've always, and sometimes it's for very good reasons, because if we don't do this, then this happens, and we don't want that. But I think we've all got to remind ourselves that we got to stay in the mode of being able to try something. Many years ago, I was a camp counselor, and we would spend a lot of time on our days off doing water skiing. And And back then, the thing was, if you weren't falling down, you weren't trying hard enough, right? And I think that sometimes we got to give ourselves the room to say, let's try some stuff, and we're going to be okay with maybe if it doesn't work out 100% the way we want it to, because then that'll give us feedback for the next time we try it or the next thing we try. One of the things I've found as coming into centers is one of the reasons people aren't doing things is because they already tried it once and it didn't work. So are we okay with trying things again? For instance, we had coming here, we had a sort of an antiquated paper system of keeping time in attendance for the several dozen employees that were on site. And I said, why don't we do electronic time in attendance? And apparently it had been tried about 10 years ago. The technology wasn't working. They scrapped it. And so when I was told, well, we tried it once, it didn't work. And I was like, okay, but when? Okay, 10 years ago. I think things have changed a lot in the last 10 years technology-wise. So let's try it again. So the new system's up and running. People punch in and out on their phones or at their desktop computer. It's way easier for everybody in accounting and HR and myself personally. So that's been good. So sometimes you got to try. Sometimes you got to try something again. Something maybe you sunsetted. Maybe there was a reason why it didn't work back then, but maybe you got to say, maybe times have changed. Maybe it's time to rethink this. And so the last thing, so 4 things: get to know people, get to know your property, look at your programs and services objectively, try new things or try them again. And the last thing, I think the last advantage that new directors have that we've got to keep as long as we're in a position is to be positive, right? When you take a brand new job, you're excited, hopefully. Maybe you took the job for reasons. You took the job because you believed in the mission. You took the job because you love the ministry, you love the community that you were serving. There's benefits to being in this sort of space, whether it's the location, whether it's the community that you get to serve with, the peer group, the culture of the camp or conference center that you're working at. There's tangible and intangible benefits. Maybe it was the super high salary they offered you, but it's easy after probably not. But it's easy after a little while to to get bogged down in board meetings and budget cuts and this, that, and the other, and why is this roof leaking again, and blah, blah, blah. But all of that doesn't change the fact that you took this job because you wanted it, and you and whoever hired you believed you could do the job, and you and they are probably still right. So it's really important sometimes to remind ourselves why we're doing what we're doing, and go back to the reasons why we came in the first place, and say, is this something I still want to do? And probably the answer is yes. And then take that and turn it into energy that says, all right, then I still want to do all these things, and I still want to serve this community. I still do believe in the mission that I was called to. So those are my 5 things. I think those 5 things that new directors do: getting to know people, getting to know the property, judging programs and new programs objectively, and being positive, having that positive energy that comes with that. Those are advantages of new people that we can take, and we can make them last. So I'd be open to feedback, and I'd be open to questions.
As I was saying, but realized I was still muted, I have unmuted everybody for me. And so you can ask questions now. I'd like to just make a quick comment. Thank you so much, Ruben, for sharing.
Sure.
I think when I came here, and I've been here 2 years, I remember asking one of the young ladies that works in the office here, what do you need from me? And she said, fresh eyes. And I realized how fast you lose that. How much I can walk around this campus now and just not see things I was seeing those first days. And the other thing I was thinking as you were talking was there's 2 ways to be an older director. One is how long you've been at your center, but 2, just how long you've been in the career. And I'm well over 20 years in this career, and I realized that sometimes my biggest battles are within me to be open-minded when we talk about new and different things here. So just a couple comments, not really a question. Any questions?
So So, Ruben, this is Tom. You knew I'd have a question. So, out of the 4 changes, the 4 new places, what would you say the biggest challenge that you faced in your first 90 days?
My second day at Crossroads Camp and Conference Center, a group of 240 came for a 10-day retreat. And during that 10 days, every single person on staff got the flu. So that was the biggest first 90-day challenge. So also the group leaders had told us that everyone was vegan, but only the group leaders were vegan. So all those 240 people were very hungry for those 10 days and very angry with us. It was exciting. Yeah.
So, Ruben, this is Shelley Steinhoff. Can you hear
Can't
me?
see you.
Yeah, I know I'm hiding. Good to see you, my
I made
friend.
plenty of room for her, by the
I
way.
know.
Yes.
So you
Okay.
know.
You know me, I'm humble and discreet.
Yeah, okay.
You cut out a little bit in the beginning of your talk. And so if you could just recap the first part. We heard you talk about doing the things that come naturally, but
Okay.
I think there was maybe a point before that if you could just reiterate.
Don't remember. That's the first part. I was talking about your personality and your predisposition.
Okay.
And how some things come naturally. So you might not, some of the things I said, for some of you would not be something you'd have to mention because it would be something that you would do naturally.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember saying.
Yeah, I think you were specifically talking about how this is applicable to every job at a center, not just for managers or directors.
Thank you, Tom. See, that was a test. Someone was listening.
So let me come back with a question then. In terms
Okay.
of what comes naturally and what you have to make more of an effort for, what's the percentage of time you spend on that maybe over the course of a day or week? Is the stuff you're naturally good at, is that where you linger and spend most of your time? Or is it the stuff that you have to work extra hard at that demands the most of your attention?
I think the stuff that you're good at is the stuff that you're going to spend time doing without being intentional about it. So if you want to spend equal time doing the things that come naturally to you and the things that don't, then you have to be intentional about doing the things that don't come naturally to do. So if you're naturally the kind of person that gets to know people and has a good time chatting it up and learning all about people, then you have to be intentional about judging your programs objectively, because you're naturally going to do the things that are fun. And but maybe if you're the kind of person that likes to crunch numbers and goes, okay, this program is working and this program isn't, so we're going to stop, then you might have to be a little more intentional about going out and having a cup of coffee with someone and saying, so tell me about your week or that sort of thing. So I'm not sure about time percentage. I think that depends on what's going on more than it depends on you as a person. But I think that you have to be intentional about doing the things that don't come natural. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah, thank you.
Just an observation. Ruben's goal was to help us establish some sense of what we should continue doing. Basically, I think, Ruben, after the new wears off, right?
Sure.
What should directors keep doing? One of the things I've had to learn, sometimes the hard way, is when you go into a new situation, like it or not, at least in some categories, you're going to become a change agent, because you will see things that need to change. You will see things that you know you can make better, and you'll go about making changes. As time goes on, I think it's really important to notice whether and when they change, because often it's so subtle. And when you come in, it's very easy early on to form opinions about systems, about people, about all of the things that have been there, and set your heart toward making changes. Sometimes I found myself still making changes when the changes had already happened. And it's really good to notice when they happen and recognize and praise folks for making the changes that they do, because, as we all know, change is hard.
Very good.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, Ruben, I guess, and I will admit that I tend to be the one who loves crunching numbers and has had to work at learning to be more interactive with people, because that's not necessarily where my comfort zone is. But I also am wondering just about boundaries and how you look at that, because certainly I want to get to know people, and I think I do know basics about all the people on the staff, and yet at some point it feels like there needs to be a boundary that you can go too far. I mean, do you really want to chat about what they did out on a date on Saturday night, or well, you know what I mean? No. I mean, I think there have to be boundaries to it. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's got to be boundaries, and I think a lot of that depends on the situation that you're in, and certainly the situation that folks who work for you are in. Like at a smaller center where there's only 3 or 4 people on the staff, that's a very different sort of a feel than when somewhere like this where there's 30 or 40 people on staff. You're never going to be as close with all those folks. And I think I was thinking more like. Not necessarily that you would know the ins and outs, like what'd you have for dinner last night, and that's or maybe more personal information. But in terms of how people are doing, if they're struggling, if they're enjoying their job, if they're feeling fulfilled, if they're feeling heard, if they're feeling those are the sort of conversations that you have when you're a new director. Like. Do you like it here? Why are you here? What is it that you like about this job? What can we do better? And I think those are the kind of things that I was talking about, that you have to keep having those conversations. And as Charles said, sometimes someone might say to you in your first couple of weeks, well, I really wish this was different, and you might be thinking, I really got to fix that, and it's already fixed. And they go, oh, we've gone from a 2 to a 3, so I feel better. Even if you might be trying to get to a 7. I think there's definitely boundaries. But what I was talking about was getting to know people in terms of the how they're doing and what they're feeling in terms of the ministry or the role that they're in.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does.
Well, good.
Anything else from anybody? Last call. Thank you so much, Ruben. Appreciate you doing that today.
Glad to have it.
This one and a number of the other coffee breaks have been taped, and they're on the IACA website, and you're welcome to go back if you want somebody else to see them. I was just looking today. I think there's 6 or 8 of them there, and this one will be added very shortly. So you can go back and check them again. Next month, Christina Carnax, who's a staff member here, will be talking about fundraising at Conference Center. She's relatively new, and she's new to the industry. She's going to be sharing what she's learned about raising funds in our industry. And I think that should be pretty interesting. Very sharp young lady. And we will be taking a break from having coffee breaks in June and July because summer is busy time. So there will be no coffee break in June and July. We'll start up again in August. I'm looking for folks who might be interested in leading a session, so don't hesitate to contact me if you would like to lead a session, if you have a topic you'd like to share with folks. And I think that's it. Anything from anybody before we end the session? Thanks so much for attending today.
If you'd like the copy of the outline, my email's on the screen. That's my name.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.